Okay, so dualism is scientifically poo-pooed, but is probably the most common belief in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
like intuitively we're all dualists.
People feel like it.
We feel like we're
it
not.
feels like me that's doing the talking. I could just cut off my limbs and everything, and I'd still be me. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
The body doesn't really matter, and then people keep taking that all the way up to here to the brain, right? But the data doesn't really support that.
And if you're a religious person, you don't really care about the data because you can say, well, I have a spirit, I have a soul, it's eternal. Don't ask me any more questions about how that works because I can't explain it. It's just it's a faith thing. And dualism, I would say, is intrinsic to religious belief.
Yeah.
You can't have an afterlife beyond the body unless dualism is true, unless there's a you that's different from the firings of the synapses and the neurons in your brain. On the other hand, if you're a materialist and you just believe that the mind is that our sentience and our consciousness are emergent properties of the physicality of our body, does that necessarily mean that you're not a dualist? Like, is there a place for dualism in materialism?
I guess you could try and come up with something. What would you call it? Some kind of pixie dust
Yeah,
scenario,
the pixie dust scenario. Or that there's something special about meat.
Right.
Maybe
so
it's
that
not
would be,
dualism. Maybe it is
biology is special.
The biology, yes, that there's a capacity for biology to become self-aware that non-biological systems don't have. So now we're talking
That's
about...
one possibility, yeah. We don't know what that would be yet, because in theory, everything we can map from the way neurons interact and the way they'd be wired together, you could mimic with the computer, the software, or with hardware. And that's kind of how some of these deep learning, machine learning networks actually work. So, but that remains, a possibility. Absolutely. Yeah.
What, that you could...
there's something special about biology. There's something that you couldn't, in other words, there's something extra more than the sum of the parts.
Yes.
When you add it, when you do with that you bring together with biology that you wouldn't get with chips or with simulated neurons or whatever.
There's something that the rat is bringing to the table.
Yeah.
That is not just the same as the fighter jet.
Yeah.
But you don't like that idea.
It's a possibility. I mean, I don't think we have enough evidence to go in that direction at this stage.
Do we have enough evidence to understand how sentience arises out of information processing?
No. I mean, not really. There's a couple of theories. And so one of them, the information integration theory, which sparked us some controversy recently, is one of the leading ones. Global workspace theory would be another one. So, and it's interesting, this theory, the IIT, the information integration theory, has been around for, I want to say at least 10 years plus. And it's heavily mathematical, and it's based on some, what do they call them? Probably axioms on what it feels like to be conscious, right? And then it launches, so it's a little bit philosophical, but then it launches into heavy math very quickly. So a couple of months ago, a group of over 100 scientists, neuroscientists, signed a letter saying it's pseudoscience. And this created, this is pretty nerdy controversy, but it created a lot of excitement amongst colleagues and people like, oh my God, pseudoscience is such a strong word. How can you say this? And people saying that's going to bring the whole consciousness field down. Everyone's going to just write the whole thing off now as being pseudoscience when it's not. So people pushed back and said that.
And what claim exactly was being accused of being pseudoscientific?
Just the theory itself.
What is the theory?
So that it's very hard to explain without getting into the math. So it's based on so the best way to describe it would be that when information is integrated in a complex system, the more complex it is and the more integrated it is, the more conscious it is. And
integrated meaning the more connected.
Basically, there's a strict mathematical definition of that I can't bring to mind.
So lots and lots of information, and all of the bits of information are connected in sufficiently complicated ways.
Yeah.
That gives rise to the feeling of the information having a soul.
When you do that, whether it's in a plant or an iPhone or a human, you get some level of consciousness. So it plugs straight into panpsychism.
Right.
And there's other things, there's assumptions made in there that consciousness is absolute. It's like all or nothing. You can't be half conscious, and some other things like that. And people object to, and I didn't sign the letter, but I relate to this, that it's a good theory should be falsifiable. It should be very clear which experiments you could do, which would rule that theory out. That's sort of part of the basis of science. And it's very hard to do that with this theory for a couple of reasons. One is for the thing, phi is the thing you calculate with this integration calculation. And to do that for a human brain is so far beyond any computers. There's no way we can do that right now, right? We struggle to do that with a mouse brain. And so it's very hard to test this theory. And so therefore very hard to falsify it. So it's non-falsifiable. Is that a scientific theory? And that's kind of where they were going with this letter.
Right. Okay. What's the alternative hypothesis?
Well, there's not that many. That's the problem.
So the people who are signing this letter saying this new field of information theory is bunk, is pseudoscience, what would they prefer to believe about how consciousness arises?
They want to do more empirical research. They want to improve the theory to make it falsifiable, have it sort of move it away from philosophy a bit, have it more falsifiable and more based in data rather than sort of, because the way the theory is, it is based on like, being conscious of the color red feels all or nothing, absolute. Therefore, we'll make the theory, the mathematics like that. And so there's a couple of steps like that where
I thought you were saying that this bumps into a kind of a panpsychism, but that doesn't sound like an all or nothing theory. Panpsychism sounds incrementalist.
It is that, but in terms of the way consciousness is defined, it's like you can't have you can't be half conscious. There's just these 5 units of consciousness. And so
it does sound like pseudoscience when you put it like that. It sounds like Dianetics or like, it sounds like...
It's never sat... whenever so Giulio Ciannone is the guy that came up with it. When I sat with him and talked about it, like, this all makes sense. This is amazing. And then a day later you're going, wait a second. You just kind of it sounded like you just made up that part. Like, I don't know. There's something about it that never sat well with me.
Right.
I didn't sign the letter because I just thought it was a strong call to start throwing around pseudoscience.